Good evening, students. Today we are going to study My Last Duchess by Robert Browning. My Last Duchess is a poem which is a dramatic monologue, and dramatic monologue is a type of poem in which there is a single speaker. The speaker speaks out his emotions not when he is all alone, but there is a presence of a silent listener. There is a difference between a soliloquy and a dramatic monologue. One similarity also. The similarity is that the speaker is single, but as compared to as contrast to a soliloquy, dramatic monologue is spoken when the person is not all alone, but there is a presence of a silent listener. And how do we come to know that there is a presence of a silent listener? By the reactions of the speaker. So, today we are going to do My Last Duchess by Robert Browning. So, let me tell you the background of the poem. My Last Duchess is a poem which is set in the period of Renaissance, as you come to know by the name Duchess. So, this is a story of dukes and duchesses. So, here is a duke who is talking to a messenger. So the main speaker in the poem is the duke, and the listener, the silent listener, is the messenger who has come with a proposal of a second marriage. So the duke is taking round with the messenger and showing him his house. And while crossing the gallery, he comes across a life-size portrait of his duchess, and he purposely stands there in order to show him the life-size portrait of his last duchess. So we will do stanza by stanza. That's my last duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder now. Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. Now, in this stanza, the poet says that is my last duchess painted on the wall. That's my last duchess painted on the wall means she isn't alive anymore and she is painted on the wall. So he's showing the life-size portrait to the messenger, and he says, looking as if she were alive. It means that the portrait is so very lively, so filled with life, that it doesn't look like a portrait, but it looks as if it is a real life size person. I call that piece a wonder now. Why is that masterpiece a wonder, that piece of painting a wonder? Because it is so very accurate, it is so very lifelike that you cannot differentiate the painting from the real person if she was standing alive there. So he names a very famous poet, very famous painter, Fra Pandolf. Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. He says that Fra Pandolf was a very popular painter of the Renaissance time, and he engaged Fra Pandolf in order to make a portrait of his wife, and there she stands. And how much time did it take to paint the painting? Whole day. Will it please you sit and look at her? I said. Fra Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you this pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance, but to myself they turn, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I. Now the speaker, the duke, he thinks that there is a question in the mind of the listener. And who is the listener? The messenger. So actually there is no question from the side of the messenger, but he himself answers. Because there is suspicion in his mind, he thinks that there might be a question which might be arising in the minds of all the onlookers. So he says that whoever looks at this life-size picture, there's a question in their minds, that how this earnestness of glance came into the eyes of the duchess. So he says that people want to ask this question, but they dare not, because they are afraid of me, because I am a duke. And he also informs that I only put down the curtain for you. And he says, will it please you to rise? And seemed as if they would ask me if they does. Seemed. Now here the important thing is that you have to notice the word seem. This is not actual, but it seems. So most of the time he just assumes things which do not exist. How such a glance came there? So, not the first are you to turn and ask thus. So, it was not her husband's presence only, called that spot of joy into the duchess' cheek. Now, again, he is showing his own suspicious mind by this dialogue. He says that it is not you who are asking. There are a lot of people who want to ask if they dare, but he says it was not her presence, husband's presence only. Call that spot of joy. What do you mean by spot of joy? Spot of joy is the smile on the face of the Duke. So he says that she smiled to each and every person. It was not only my presence that called the smile on her face. So he himself assumes that maybe, perhaps Fra Pandolf's chance to say, her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half flush that dies along her throat. So, it might not have happened in reality, but the Duke thinks because his mind is filled with suspicions. So he says, why this smile came on the face of my wife when she was being painted? He thinks that maybe, perhaps the painter, he chanced to say that, Madam, you are looking very beautiful, or your gown covers your wrist very much, or my paint can never hope to reproduce the beauty of your throat. So it is just the thinking in the mind of the Duke. So he says that maybe the painter, while looking at the beautiful face of my wife, he gave such compliment, and my wife was happy and she gave a beautiful smile to the painter, which he captured into his painting. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. So my wife thought that such stuff means such compliments from any common man were courtesy. She thought that it was courtesy to smile back when somebody compliments you. And you might have noticed that when the Duke is telling the characteristics of the Duchess, he is indirectly telling his own characteristics, and he is also telling the characteristics of his wife. So the first thing we come to know about his wife, that she was a very courteous person, and she did not have the feeling of high and low. And she was so very thankful that she might have smiled in a very casual manner, but the Duke is thinking otherwise. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whatever she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. So, she had a heart. Again, he is indirectly telling him the qualities of his wife. She had a heart too soon made glad. Means she was a very simple person who loved to look at the beauties of nature. So he says that she loved whatever she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. So we come to know that she was a very lively person, full of life. My favor, sir, it was all one. My favor at her breast, the drooping of the daylight in the west, the bow of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her. The white mule she rode with round the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike the approving speech. Now again there is a complaint that her looks went everywhere, and she was happy in equal manner with so many common things that happened to her. She was equally happy when she used to admire the drooping daylight in the west. She was equally happy when the Duke, her husband, used to gift her necklace. She was equally happy when somebody broke in the orchard to bring cherries for her, and she was equally happy with the ride of the mule. All and each would draw from her alike the approving speech. So we come to know that the Duke thought that he should get a special attention from his wife, but his wife was so very courteous that she used to thank people in the same manner, or blush at least. She thanked men, good, but thanked somehow, I know not how, as if she ranked my gift of a 900-year-old name with anybody's gift. Now, he accepts that she used to smile at me whenever I passed her. But he said that who smiled, who passed her without the same smile? So he says that it was all equal for her. But it is the thinking of the Duke. He says that all and each would draw from her alike the approving speech. Somehow, she thanked men good, but somehow I know not. He says that she used to thank people in the same manner as she used to thank me when I gave her a 900-year-old name. What do you mean by 900-year-old name? It means that he married her into an aristocratic family which had a history of 900-year-old. He made her the proud member of his family. Who would stoop to blame this sort of trifling, even had you skill in speech which I have not? Now, the persona of the poem, the Duke, he says, who would stoop? Stoop means to come down at the level of. Who would come down at the level of complaining such a person? Even if you had skill, he says that I don't have skill of speech, but even if you have skill of speech, how can you blame or how can you complain your wife that here you miss the mark and here you exceed the mark? So we come to know that he didn't even take care to explain to his wife that these habits in you irritate me. Even then, and if she let herself be lessoned so, nor plainly set her wits to yours, forsooth, and make excuse, even then there would be some stooping, and I choose never to stoop. He said, I chose never to stoop. This person, this Duke, was so very haughty, so filled with conceit that he did not even let his wife know that he does not like certain things in her, because he thought that this was stooping. Stooping means coming down at the level of. He says that maybe if I told her that these habits in you irritate me, maybe she would not like my complaining. Maybe she would not improve her behavior. Oh, sir, she smiled no doubt whenever I passed her, but who's passed without much the same smile? Now he says, oh, sir, he's talking to the messenger. She smiled at me whenever I passed her. But who passed without much the same smile? So here we come to know that the Duke is feeling jealous of his wife. And he is very, very possessive in a very negative and destructive manner. This grew. I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together. Now this is the crux of the poem. And this is a very cruel crux of the poem, that the Duke did not even take the pains of correcting his wife or even conveying his feelings to his wife, but all of a sudden he gave commands that his wife should be murdered. It is very sad part of the poem. This grew, I gave commands, then all the smiles stopped together, and there she stands as if alive. And without any shame, without any feeling of guilt in his mind, and rather in a very conceited manner, he says that there she stands. There she stands means now she is not alive, and here she is in the portrait. Will it please you rise? Now, do you remember that in the beginning of the poem, he said, will it please you sit down? Will it please you rise? So, he is a very dominating person. Here in this poem, we come to know about the story of the Duke and the Duchess, and we also come to know about the personal characteristics of the Duke as well as of the Duchess. There she stands as if alive, And why she is standing as if alive? Because Fra Pandolf, the famous Renaissance painter, he has worked busily a day in order to paint the life-size painting of the Duchess. We will meet the company below. Now he says, we will meet the company below. What do you mean by the company? Those people, maybe the parents of the girl who he is going to marry. So he says, we will come downstairs and we will meet the company below. I repeat, the Count, your master's known munificence, is ample warrant that no just pretense of mine for dowry will be disallowed. Now here comes the quality, the characteristic of greed. We come to know that he is greedy also. He says that I will refuse to take dowry, but the count means whose daughter he wants to marry, the count will not agree to my refusal. And he is known for his charity, he is known for his generosity. So even if I refuse, he will give me ample of dowry. Though his fair daughter's self, as I avowed at starting, is my object. But he says that I just want his fair daughter's self. I don't want any dowry, I don't want any riches. But we come to know that there is a great difference between actions and speech. He is saying that he does not want dowry, but actually he wants it. He is a greedy person. Though his fair daughter's self, as I avowed at starting, is my object, nay, we'll go together down, sir. So he says that we will go together down, sir. Notice Neptune, though taming a sea horse, thought a rarity, which Claus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. So while these two people are going down, he shows him a statue of Neptune who is taming sea horse. And that piece of art, that statue, is made by Claus of Innsbruck. And again, he is a popular artist of Renaissance, and indirectly he wants to say that as Neptune is controlling a seahorse, I want to control my wife in future. That is why he is telling all these things. He is conveying all the so-called negative qualities of his wife, so that the messenger may convey the message to his future second wife, how she has to behave with her future husband. So this is the end of the poem, and as we all know that this is a dramatic monologue, the poet is telling his qualities. And what are the qualities of the Duke? He is greedy, he is rude, he is cruel, he is haughty, he is suspicious, and one good quality in him, that he is a lover of art. And what are the characteristics of the personality of the last Duchess? She was a very simple person. Her life was like an open book. She was innocent. She was the lover of nature. She was courteous. She did not differentiate between servants and herself. She did not have any sense of distinction that she should behave rudely to her servants. Why? Because she was a well-bred person, but her characteristics were not liked by the Duke, and so she was murdered. Now this is the very sad part of the poet, that she was murdered, rudely murdered. He said that I gave orders and all the smiles stopped together. So this is the very, very sad part of the poem, that she was murdered, and without even letting her know that what was the reason of her getting murdered. Imagine some people might have come to kill her, and poor thing, she was such an innocent lady that she did not even come to know why she was murdered. So this was all for today, and in next class we will do another poem by Robert Browning, Last Ride Together. Thank you.